Hi, welcome back to Country Basket Weaving. I'm your hostess, Sandy Atkinson. Today we're going to be working on our Wild Things wall pouch, and some of the material we're going to be using in it is laid out here on the table. Some of these we'll use today, some of them we'll use next week. But let's go through them real quickly and give you an idea of some of the materials that we can pull from nature and work with. First of all, of course, we need a base for our basket, and I like to work with the grapevine. This is a really full one, lots of curly tentacles on it. We would need another hoop or some type of something in here to make it work for us. But grapevines are real easy to work with. Don't overlook other different types of vines in the nature, out in nature that you can pull from. Some of them will work, some of them won't. You're just going to have to experiment with them. We also have some broom corn here. We could work some of that into a basket. Artichoke rosette makes a real pretty accent on a basket. Philodendron sheaves, these are from Florida. These work in just beautiful. I've used those a lot. Of course, there's some wheat. I like to work with the long bearded wheat. These are palm inflorescence. Again, just a knobby, good texture to put into a basket. We have some long pine needles here. I believe these are from one of the Carolinas. And I like to work with raffia, and I like to work with corn husk, and both of these can be dyed. When you're working with your dyeing up some reed, just throw some of this into your dye pot and you get beautiful colors. Also, you can work with the beautiful ornamental corn, the Indian type corn. You get beautiful purples with those corn husks, and I like to work those too. I like to work in some jute. That works good. And of course seagrass, which we've used plenty of times in our basket. I also like to work with core, and this we'll be working with a lot today. This is real fun to, kind of messy, but fun to work with. Don't overlook some of your yarns. The best place I find to get yarns is in a specialty shop. They carry some beautiful, beautiful yarns, beautiful colors, knobby yarns and textures. They're fun to add here and there. And then roving. I like to work with roving also. Another, just before it's woven into a yarn, we have roving. Feathers are fun to add. You can add some feathers, beads, some maybe some leather strips. Also, you can work with birch bark. I know there's baskets made out of the whole basket made out of birch bark. We're going to take slivers off from it and weave those in on one of our baskets. To get started, we're going to make our Wild Things wall pouch. I have two versions here. This one I have some wild thistle put into it as an accent and some core. And again, I started with a grapevine and an oak hoop. And over here is just another variation, the same basket. I've added the rosette here, some raffia, and let's get started. I've already done one side here. I have a D handle here that I'm using. I like it because it's flat on the back and it works up and has it so it can lean next to or lay on a wall. And I have my one God's Eye already done. We'll get the other one started and just kind of review this. I know we've done a God's Eye before. I always think of this as 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to lay with the shiny side up my caning on on 1, and I'm going to go up over 2. Whoops, I'm caught here. And around 2, cross up over 2, going around 3, cross over to 4, pull it through, go around 4, and cross over 4 and go back down to 1. We're going to keep repeating this, and we won't see our God's eye form until we've done maybe 3 or 4 rounds. Now I have a lot to work around. I have a lot of nubbies here. My God's eye, when I work on vines and things like this, my God's eye never seems to look real straight and real even, but that's kind of the beauty of it. I'm going to work around this curl. I don't want to lose that curl. Takes a little more time because we're working around things. I'm going to come in here and clip my tail that I began with. I don't want that sticking out. Let's get rid of that, and I can weave over it. When I come up around in here and I'm laying the caning next to itself, I want it to butt up, but I don't want it to overlap. And again, I'm going to try to work around this tiny branch here. I don't want to lose it. Work it in and around. We're going to count our rows on the inside. I can get a close-up here. I have 3 rows done. I'm going to need, let's first of all switch over here where I have my God's eye done. This one came out a little bit neater. I'm going to count my rows back here on this other side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 rows. And over here, I already have 8 rows. So I'm going to come up here and do 1 more row, and then I'm going to end my piece. So I've already done the row. I'm going to come around here, wrap this down, come on the inside, stick this up in here, and give it a tug. And I can clip off the excess length, and I finished my God's eye. I'm going to use 6 round for my spokes on here, and I have to add spokes in multiples of 2. I'm going to add 2 on the front and 2 on the back. I like to start with a point that will fit up right into my God's eye. I'm fitting it right up in there. That's where I'm going to hold it. If it sticks out a little bit right here, don't worry. It's going to help hold it in, and we can make an adjustment later. Again, I'm going to stick that other one up in there. This one's a little bit too long. I want it a little bit shorter than my bottom, so I'm going to shorten it up a little bit. I have to add another rib, and I'm going to stick it right up here again. This one I want about halfway the height between my first hoop here and the one I just put in, which is going to be right about there. Cut it off with a point, stick it up into my God's eye. There's my first 2 ribs. I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to do the same thing in the back, but when I put these in, I'm going to make them go flat so I can keep the back of my basket flat. And I remember have to add in multiples of 2 per side. So I'm going to add 1 more, stick it right up in there. I know it's sticking out a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to make an adjustment for it later. And stick it up in there. And if you stick it too hard, you might break it. Let's cut another one. You don't have to work with this wet. You can work with it dry. It's flexible enough. There we go. Keeping this flat back here. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to start out, I like to start out with something small. I'm going to start out with some number 2 round, and I've got some dyed here a peach color. And I'm going to lay my piece right here. I'm going to start here on rib. This is now considered a rib also. Start on rib 1. I'm going up to the right. I'm going to be over on my first rib, under on my second, over my third, and then around my rim. Pull everything through, and I'm going to come back. Now this is going to be hard. Sometimes these ribs will pop out. Just be patient with it. I went under my first rib, then I'm over my second rib in the front, under my third, and over my rim. If your reed isn't bending real well, if your round reed happens to crack up here, take your needle nose pliers and come in here and give it a squeeze. That'll help it bend over this rim without breaking. Then I'm coming back, going around my rim, over my first one, my first rib, under my second, then I'm back over my top one again, my center one. Okay, I'm going to keep repeating this pattern, going over and under for several rows until I build up this side in here, and this is also securing this in so these ribs won't come out. Always under. When I'm going from right to left, I will be under my center rib. When I come back going from left to right, I will always be over it, kind of a checkpoint. Butt these rows up, pack them in tight. When I've got about 3 or 4 rows done, I'm going to go to the other side and secure in that side. You could use seagrass in here. The yarn is nice to use in here. I need to explain one more thing to you. Let me pull this through. When you're working a row, see, here's one that popped out. Just stick it back up in there. When you're working, a row always starts here on your center rib, comes up to the right, circles and down, comes back to the left, circles and comes back down to the center. That's one row. And so I'm going to begin and end each row right here with the center rib. Taking out another piece of my number 2 round. You wouldn't even have to use peach in this case because this is a wild thing. You could start over here and maybe put in some seagrass over here instead, or some yarns. Because it is different type of a basket, you really don't need to follow a certain pattern. I'm going to secure this one. Remember, I started in the middle, over and under. I'm under my center. I'll pack everything up in here tight. As I work on this, I'm always going to be working on 2 sides. I'm going to work back and forth from one side to the other. I'm caught on a little knob here. There we go. Trying to just straighten this all out. Packing my row in tight. Following my over-under pattern. I'm going to get this side started and then we're going to go on. We need to talk about some other things that we'd like to add into this basket. Continue, do the same number of rows on this side and then maybe cut these ends off and we'll go and add something new. On this one, I have my God's Eye. I really made this grapevine a really different shape. I've done my God's Eye in the caning and some number 2 round. I've added some core and I've even added some flat reed in here. You notice over here I didn't follow the exact same pattern. I've got some yarns in here and some peach over here. Let's add some of this wheat. I like working with the wheat. There's 2 ways you can do it. You can use an over-under weave, or you can take 3 lengths, which like I'm going to do here, and we're going to twine this on. There's my first one, My second one I'm going to bring down next to it and twine on here. And bring down this one and twine this on here. And this one I've already added some more ribs. Come back up here, take your patience. I'm working around all these little curls. And I'm going to twine these down here. Then I have to decide what I want to do with these ends. Do I want to bring them up the back? It's kind of a lot of decisions to make on this basket. Or do I want to just leave them hanging out? I think on this one, if I left them hanging out, this would be kind of pretty. Maybe come in and cut this length off a little bit and leave it a little bit long so I can do some adjusting with it later. When I get finished, I can go back and trim it. Got one sliding out here. These are slippery. I need something to secure these in, so let's take some of our palm inflorescence here and lay these down. Maybe I want some of these to stick up, so I would lay one end and weave this one in. I like to do most of my accents right here in front of the basket. Now my first one I laid on my center rib over here. My second one, I'm going to go under first and lay that on my top rib. These butts here are really kind of pretty, and I'd like to have them show along with the tips. Tips up here are the narrow end. The butts are the heavy end. And I've just went an over-under weave with this one. This one's really pretty. It has some little knobs on it. If I can be real careful and work that in and not break them. I'm going to work this one back and then carefully work it forward and try to save those knobs on there. I can leave these sticking up. I can kind of play with them maybe and tie them down here later. A lot of different things we can do with this when we're working with all these wild materials. Let's add one more in here. Okay, let's add a little bit of core. I know I've got some added over here. It'd be a nice accent. This is kind of messy to work with. I'll cut off a length, and we're going to weave this in. I'm going to start here in the middle again, always over, and work it under. If my weave isn't exact, because working on this, the wild things, it's okay, because we have so many different ends and different things sticking up that it's not going to show. I'm going to circle around my hoop. And this one I'm going to take to the back because I haven't filled the back in for a little while, working with my wheat and with my palms pieces there. It's still an over-under weave. So let's bring this to the back. Now back in the back here, I am back on my weave, where I had woven in the reed before, the blue reed. Now I'm back on my regular weave. And I'm just going to keep adding things like this, either twining it in or adding it with an over-under weave. When I come to the end of my core here, I can just leave the tail end sticking out and maybe fray it out a little bit. See how pretty that's becoming? Kind of think of a pattern, maybe work with a color scheme. Now I want this to end up front, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and bring it right up front now so I can leave that end out and maybe fray that out. Careful as you work with things that you don't break what you've already put in there. I need to come over and work on the other side with another different material. Let's work with some some of our long pine needles. You can do them singly, you can do several together. Again, I have the butts here. Let's try to show these butts up here. Maybe kind of put them like that and just twine these in. Most of your natural materials need to soak for a little longer time, probably even up to an hour or all night. You can work these in here. One more item. You might want to put in a few more of those. Let's work with our Dracaena leaf here. This is really pretty at the top. We can work this in over-under weave. I think I will try to lay this up here. It's wet. If I lay it up here and clamp it and let it dry that way, then it'll stay for me here. If I let it dry that way, when it's dry, I can take it off and it'll take the shape I've... Nope, this is kind of stiff. Let me show you another way. You can do it that way, or even to come in here and split the leaf in 3. Split it into 3 sections. I'm going to use this section as 1. I know I have 2 there, but I'm going to use it as 1. And I'm going to twine it in. I think perhaps it'll stay easier for me that way. Start with 1. Bring my middle one over and twine that one in. Bring my next one over and twine that one in. This one I'd probably want to work all the way back here to the other side, turn it and bring it back. We need to keep filling this area in, so we may have to do some turns on there so that this area is filled in and we get that path going down the middle. We've talked about that before. Wrong basket. Need to grab this one over here. Here I've put in a lot of different things. I started with seagrass on this one. Here's some core. I've used a little bit more of the reed, the 1/4 inch reed here, and I want to show you quickly how to end it. When I have 2 ends, I have one coming from the back and one coming from the front. I'm going to weave this back, and it gets kind of tight in here, and that's exactly what we want to happen. I'm going to bring my front one down to the middle, and then I'm going to bring my back one down to the middle also, and then they're going to overlap each other and lay on top of each other and end like that. And then want to come back and bring this piece down. I'm going to have to open this up to get between it. But I want it kind of tight in here. But there's just so many ideas, so many things that you can do working on a basket like this. The ideas are endless. Try different materials that you find out in nature. Perhaps you're out taking a hike and you find different things. I know that I've even tried seashells and different things and drilled a little hole in it and attach it with perhaps some raffia or some No. 2 round. A lot of different things that you can do. Working this through here. Next week, we're going to be working with a lot of these same materials, kind of picking up from here. We're going to do a little bit different style of a basket and working in a lot of beautiful natural materials again. Naturals are always fun to work with. See how nice that makes a finish on there? Also, I like to weave and leave a lot of the material sticking out, so you kind of have to play with that, weave underneath it. As long as you're keeping a basic weave going, you can do almost anything to this pattern. Here I'm coming out here. And I'm going to be back to the front. This is the one that is ending. I'm going to bring that up there. Cut my length here and hide my end under there. Really fun to work with naturals. We'll work again next week with all these beautiful materials and have a new style for you.